The snow had been falling for 6 hours when Walter Brennan decided to close early. There was no point staying open. The highway was empty. The state police had announced road closures on the radio, and the only cars that had passed Brennan's roadside since noon were heading somewhere else, somewhere with chain hotels and emergency supplies and people who had the sense to stay indoors. Walter stood at the front window, coffee cup in hand, watching the white wall of the storm erase the world. The parking lot had disappeared an hour ago. The old neon sign, Brennan's Roadside Diner, home of Mama's Pie, flickered and buzzed, fighting the cold. The sign had been doing that for 3 years now, and Walter couldn't afford to fix it, just like he couldn't afford to fix the freezer that ran too warm, or the grill that took 20 minutes to heat up, or the crack in the foundation that let water seep into the storeroom every spring. He was 61 years old. He'd been running this diner for 33 of those years, since his father had his first heart attack, and handed over the keys with a mix of pride and apology. Before that, his grandfather had run it, back when it was a lunch counter with 6 stools and a hand-painted sign. 3 generations of Brennans serving coffee and eggs and pie to truckers and travelers on this stretch of Route 28. Now, looking at the empty booths and the ancient cash register and the yellowed photographs on the walls, Walter felt the weight of all those years pressing down on him. The place was dying. He was dying with it. The bank letter was in his pocket. He'd memorized every word by now. Regret to inform you that without full payment of the outstanding balance, $217,183.16, by February 28th, foreclosure proceedings will commence. February 28th, 23 days away. 23 days to find more money than Walter had seen in the past 5 years combined. He'd tried everything. Loans, rejected. His credit was shot. Selling equipment. Nobody wanted a 30-year-old Hobart mixer or a deep fryer held together with hope and duct tape. Family. His brother had nothing. His kids were still paying student loans. The regulars had noticed, of course. They'd started leaving bigger tips, organizing a GoFundMe that raised a heartbreaking $2,000 before stalling out. But $2,000 wasn't $217,000. Nothing was $217,000. The debt wasn't from bad business, though the business was bad enough. It was from Carol, his wife, the woman who'd spent 30 years beside him in this kitchen, who'd perfected her mother's pie recipe and made it famous, who died 3 years ago from a cancer that ate through their savings and then their equity and then their future. The hospital bills alone had been $340,000. Insurance covered less than half. Now Walter was raising their 2 youngest alone, Marcus, 20, working at the hardware store, Lily, 17, finishing her senior year, and trying to keep a diner. Open that hadn't turned a profit since 2019, the big highway had moved, the chains had moved in, the town had hollowed out, and Brennan's roadside was a monument to something that didn't exist anymore. Walter drained his coffee and checked his watch. 8 o'clock. He'd close up, go home to his cold house, try to figure out what to tell the kids. They knew things were bad. They didn't know how bad. He was reaching for the light switch when he heard it. An engine. Struggling, getting louder. Through the wall of snow, a single headlight appeared, weaving, unsteady. A motorcycle. Someone was riding a motorcycle in this. Walter watched, frozen, as the bike pulled into the parking lot, or what had been the parking lot before the snow buried it. The rider was moving wrong, jerky and slow. Even from here, Walter could see the ice coating the leather jacket, the way the man's hands seemed stuck to the handlebars. The bike listed sideways and went down. The rider went with it, sprawling in the snow, not getting up. Walter was out the door before he'd made a conscious decision. The cold hit him like a physical blow. Below zero, the radio had said, wind chill making it worse. He ran to the fallen bike, snow up to his knees, and found a man lying face down in a drift. Hey, you okay? He turned the man over. The face was gray, lips blue, eyes unfocused. Alive, but barely. The leather jacket was coated in ice, the gloves soaked through. This man had been riding in the storm for hours. He was dying. Come on. Walter got an arm under him, hauled him upright. Come on, work with me. You gotta move. The man mumbled something unintelligible, tried to help, couldn't make his legs work. Walter half-carried, half-dragged him across the parking lot, through the door, into the blessed warmth of the diner. He got him into the back room, the storage area, cramped and cluttered, but there was an old army cot back there that Walter sometimes used when the roads were too bad to drive home. He laid the man down, stripped off the frozen jacket, the soaked gloves, the boots that had ice inside them. The man's skin was pale and waxy. His breathing was shallow. Hypothermia. Not the kind you could fix with a blanket and hot coffee. Walter had seen it before, during the blizzard of '97. You had to warm them slowly, or the cold blood from the extremities would flood the heart and kill them. He grabbed blankets from the supply closet, all of them, the ones he kept for himself when the heating bill got too high. He layered them over the man, then went to make coffee, the strongest and hottest he could manage. He found the space heater in the corner, the one that ate electricity and would spike his bill, and aimed it at the cot. He didn't think about cost. He didn't think about risk. He thought about a man dying in his back room and what his father would have said if Walter let that happen. After 30 minutes, the man's eyes cleared. He looked around, confused, then focused on Walter. Where? His voice was a rasp, barely audible. Brennan's roadside. You crashed in my parking lot. You were half dead from cold. The man processed this. Tried to sit up. Couldn't. My bike. Still outside. Can't do anything about it tonight. You're not going anywhere until this storm passes. Walter handed him a cup of coffee. Drink this. Slow. The man's hands were shaking too hard to hold the cup. Walter held it for him, guided it to his lips, waited while he drank. Thank you. The words came out broken, sincere. Thank you. I was sure. Don't think about it. Just focus on getting warm. The man lay back against the pillow. He was maybe 50. Hard to tell with the gray in his beard and the weathered lines on his face. Big man, broad shoulders, hands that looked like they'd done hard work. His eyes, now that they were focused, were sharp and alert, taking everything in. I'm sorry, the man said. To put you out like this, I can pay... You're not paying anything. Walter pulled up a chair, sat down. His knees ached from the cold dash across the parking lot. You'd have died out there. Any decent person would have done the same. The man looked at him for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, surprise, maybe, or recognition of something he hadn't expected to find. Not everyone would have, he said quietly. Trust me. Walter didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Outside, the wind howled against the walls, and the old building creaked and groaned, and somewhere in the distance a transformer blew with a sound like a gunshot. The lights flickered, held. You got a name? Walter asked. Jake. The man paused. Jake Mercer? Walter Brennan. You're welcome to stay until the storm passes, Jake. I've got some food I can heat up. Nothing fancy, but it's warm. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Walter stood. But I'm going to. You rest. I'll be back. He went to the kitchen and looked at what he had. Not much. The supply delivery had been delayed by the storm, and he'd been running on fumes anyway. There was half a roast chicken in the cooler, some potatoes, the end of a loaf of bread, a few vegetables. Enough for a meal, maybe two. He thought about his own dinner, waiting at home. The kids would have eaten by now. Marcus could cook when he needed to, and Lily was better at it than Walter. There was nothing in his house that couldn't wait. He started cooking. The good pans, the ones Carol had bought for their 20th anniversary. The seasoning blend his mother had taught him, the one that made everything taste like home. He roasted the potatoes with garlic and rosemary, reheated the chicken until the skin crisped, sautéed the vegetables with butter and salt. When he brought the plate to the back room, Jake was sitting up, color returning to his face. He stared at the food like it was a mirage. This is too much, he said. You can't. Already did. Walter said, the plate on the crate that served as a bedside table. Eat. I made enough for both of us. He went back and got his own plate, smaller, and returned to the chair. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the howling wind and the clink of forks against ceramic. This is incredible, Jake said finally. Where did you learn to cook like this? Here, my whole life. Walter gestured at the walls around them. This diner's been in my family for 70 years. My grandfather opened it in 1954. I grew up in this kitchen. Jake looked around, really seeing the space now. The photographs on the walls, the worn wooden shelves stacked with supplies, the menu board, hand-painted, listing prices that hadn't changed in years. 70 years, he said. 3 generations. About to be none. The words came out before Walter could stop them. He hadn't meant to say it. Hadn't meant to burden a stranger with his problems. Jake set down his fork. What do you mean? And Walter, for reasons he couldn't explain, told him. Everything. The debt, the foreclosure notice, the 23 days, the cancer and the bills in the highway that moved and the chains that came, and the regulars who tried to help and couldn't. We talked for an hour, maybe more, while the storm raged outside and the food went cold, and Jake listened without interrupting. When Walter finally stopped, Jake was silent for a long moment. "How much?" he asked. "The exact amount. $217,483.16. Walter laughed, bitter. "I've got the number tattooed on my brain. And if you had it? If someone handed you that money tomorrow? I'd pay the bank, fix the equipment, hire back the staff I had to let go, and spend the rest of my life making sure this place was here for my grandkids." Walter shook his head. "But nobody's handing me anything. I've applied for every grant and loan there is. I'm not a good risk. I'm a 61-year-old widower running a diner on a road nobody uses anymore." Jake nodded slowly. He didn't say it would be okay. He didn't offer empty promises or false hope. He just nodded, like he understood, like he'd been somewhere similar himself. "You could have turned me away," Jake said, "when I crashed. You could have pretended you didn't see, or you could have called 911 and let them deal with it. The smart thing to do, really. Stranger in a storm, you don't know what he might do. But you didn't. You carried me inside and gave me your blankets and cooked me a meal with food you couldn't spare. Anyone would have—" "No." Jake's voice was firm. "Not anyone. I've seen enough of the world to know that. What you did tonight, that's rare. That's worth something." Walter didn't know how to respond. He felt exposed somehow, like Jake could see through the walls he'd built around his fear and exhaustion. "Get some sleep," Walter said finally. "Storm should be over by morning. We'll figure out your bike then." He left Jake in the back room and went to his usual spot behind the counter, the stool where he'd sat every night for 30 years, watching the empty parking lot and the road that led away. He didn't sleep. He sat and thought about 217,483 and the faces of his children and the weight of 3 generations pressing down on his shoulders. The coffee was cold by 2 a.m., but neither of them had stopped talking. Walter had returned to the back room around midnight, unable to sleep, and found Jake awake and alert. The color had returned fully to his face, and he was sitting up, looking through the photographs Walter had stacked in the corner. Photos Carol had taken down to clean years ago, and never gotten around to putting back up. "This your grandfather?" Jake held up a black and white image of a young man standing in front of a building that was recognizably the diner, though smaller, rougher around the edges. "That's him. Kazimierz Brzezinski. Changed his name to Charlie Brennan when he opened the place. Said Americans wouldn't trust a Polish lunch counter." Walter sat on the crate, his bones aching. He was a welder before this. Good at it, too. But he always wanted his own business, something he could pass down. The American dream. Something like that. Walter took the photo, looked at his grandfather's face, young, hopeful, naive, in the way of people who hadn't yet learned how the world worked. He built this place with his own hands. The counter out there, the stools, he made them in his garage. The neon sign, he designed it himself, paid a guy in Scranton to fabricate it. The one that flickers? It's been flickering since I was a teenager. Dad used to say it added character. Walter set the photo down. Dad ran this place for 40 years, raised me and my brother here. We did our homework in booth 4, the one by the window. Mom worked the register until she passed in '89. And you took over. 1991. Dad's first heart attack. He lived another 15 years, but he couldn't work anymore. It was supposed to be temporary. I was going to go back to school, do something else. But then I met Carol, and she fell in love with the place, and he trailed off. It became home. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Tell me about her." And Walter did. He told Jake about Carol showing up one night in 1992, a college student lost on her way to a concert, stranded when her car broke down. How she'd waited for the tow truck and ended up staying until closing, talking to Walter about everything and nothing. How she'd come back the next week, and the week after that, and eventually just stopped leaving. "She was too good for me," Walter said. "Too smart, too ambitious. She had a degree in business, could have done anything, but she loved this place. She loved what it meant. Families stopping on road trips, truckers having their first hot meal in days, regulars who knew everyone's names. She said it was the last honest place in America." "What happened?" Walter looked at his hands. "Pancreatic cancer. 3 years ago. By the time they found it, there was nothing they could do. 6 months from diagnosis to—" He couldn't say the word. "The bills ate through everything we had. I mortgaged the diner to pay for treatments that didn't work. And now, here we are." Jake leaned forward. "Walter, I have to tell you something. You don't owe me anything. Whatever you think you owe me, you don't. That's not what I mean. Jake's eyes were intense, focused. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly, not what you think I want to hear. The truth. Walter frowned but nodded. If you had the money, if someone paid off the debt and fixed the equipment and gave you a fresh start, do you think this place could survive? Actually survive long term? Walter thought about it, really thought, setting aside the desperation that had clouded his judgment for years. The highway's still there, he said slowly. It's not the main route anymore, but it's a route. There's through traffic, tourists, people avoiding the interstate. The regulars, they'd come back in a heartbeat if they thought we'd stay open. And with Carol's pie recipe, the one we stopped making when we couldn't afford the ingredients. He straightened. Yes, I think we could. If we had a real chance, not just a lifeline. What would you need? Beyond the debt? New freezer. The compressor's shot, we lose inventory every month. New grill. The one we have takes so long to heat up we can't keep up with Morning Rush, not that we have much of one anymore. A real POS system, not the register from 1978. Someone to help with social media, marketing. I don't understand any of that, but I know it matters. And staff. I had 3 employees before Carol got sick. Now it's just me. What about your kids? Marcus helps when he can, but he's got his own job. Lily's in school. I don't want them to sacrifice their futures for this place. Jake was nodding, making mental notes. Walter had the strangest feeling he was being interviewed. One more question, Jake said. If you save this diner, if it's still here in 10 years, 20 years, what happens to it? Marcus, I hope, or Lily, whoever wants it. Walter smiled, and it felt like the first real smile in years. That's the dream anyway. That's what Dad wanted for me, what Grandpa wanted for him. A place that outlasts us, a legacy that means something. Jake sat back. The intensity faded, replaced by something softer. I was on my way somewhere tonight, Jake said. Doesn't matter where. It was a bad time to be traveling, and I knew it, but I wasn't thinking clearly. Haven't been for a while. He paused. I lost someone too, not a wife, a partner, business partner, friend, the person who reminded me why I got into any of this in the first place. Any of what? Jake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I own a company, several companies actually. We started with one restaurant 25 years ago, and now we own, he waved his hand, a lot. Real estate, hospitality, investment portfolios. On paper, I'm successful. In reality, I've been drowning for months. Walter wasn't sure how to process this. The man in front of him didn't look like a business mogul. He looked like a road-worn biker with cracked knuckles and tired eyes. When Mike died, my partner, I realized I'd built something I didn't recognize anymore. We started because we loved diners, little family places, mom-and-pop operations, places exactly like this. We'd buy failing ones, fix them up, give them a second chance. But somewhere along the way, it became about numbers and acquisitions and growth for growth's sake, and I forgot what we were supposed to be doing. So you went for a ride? I went for a ride, in a blizzard, because I didn't care anymore, because I thought maybe... He stopped. It doesn't matter what I thought. What matters is that I crashed in your parking lot, and instead of leaving me to die or calling someone to handle it, you carried me inside and gave me your last meal and told me about your grandfather. I still don't understand what you're getting at. Jake reached into his jacket, the one Walter had hung up to dry, and pulled out a phone. He typed something, waited, typed something else. I have to go in the morning, he said, but I want you to hold on. 23 days, you said. Can you do that? I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Jake met his eyes. I'm asking you to choose to wait. Don't give up. Don't sell to anyone. Don't sign anything. Just wait. Walter felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope. He'd thought he'd run out of that. Why? Because you saved my life tonight. Not just the hypothermia, though that was part of it. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Why any of this matters. What we're supposed to be doing with whatever time and money we have. Jake stood, steadier now, and extended his hand. Wait for me. That's all I'm asking. Walter took his hand. The grip was firm, certain. I'll wait, he said. In the morning, the storm had passed. The world was white and silent, buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Walter woke on the cot. Jake had insisted he take it, sleeping on the floor wrapped in blankets, and found the back room empty. Jake's jacket was gone. So was Jake. The only thing left was a note, handwritten on a diner napkin, folded neatly on the crate where the photographs had been. Walter, I can't repay what you did for me last night, but I'm going to try. You showed me kindness when I didn't deserve it. and asked for nothing in return. That's the rarest thing in the world. Hold on. 23 days. No matter how dark it gets, hold on. You said you wanted to pass this place to your grandchildren. You will. I promise you that. Your friend, Jake Walter, read the note 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his shirt pocket, over his heart. He went to the window and looked out at the parking lot. Jake's motorcycle was gone. How? Walter couldn't imagine. The man could barely stand 12 hours ago. But the diner was still here. The debt was still $283.16, and in 22 days, the bank was still going to take everything. Walter started making coffee. He had a long day ahead. 12 days after the storm, the freezer died. Walter found the pool of water on the storeroom floor at 5 a.m., along with the warm, spoiled smell of meat that had been thawing for hours. He stood in the doorway and stared at $300 worth of inventory he couldn't afford to replace, running through calculations that led nowhere. The repair would cost at least $2,000. He had $300 in the register and another $400 in his personal account. Not enough. He cleaned up the mess, threw away what couldn't be saved, and opened the diner anyway. There were 2 customers that day. Earl Washington, who'd been coming every Tuesday since 1983 and ordered the same ham sandwich every time, and a truck driver passing through who stayed long enough to use the bathroom and leave a $5 tip. That night, Walter sat at the counter and looked at the bank notice again. 11 days. He hadn't heard from Jake, hadn't heard from anyone. The hope that had flickered in his chest that morning after the storm was dying, replaced by the familiar weight of resignation. He called Marcus. "Dad?" His son's voice was worried. Marcus always sounded worried now. "Is everything okay?" "The freezer died. I need to tell you something." "What kind of something?" "The diner. Something. Can you come over tomorrow after work? Bring your sister?" Silence. Then, "Yeah, we'll be there." He told them at the kitchen table in the house Carol had decorated, surrounded by photographs of the life they'd built together. Marcus sat rigid and pale. Lily cried silently, tears running down her cheeks while she stared at the foreclosure notice. 11 days, Walter said. "I've tried everything. It's just, there's no more trying to do. There has to be something." Marcus's voice was tight. "A loan, another bank, something. I've applied everywhere. Nobody will touch me." Walter hated himself for what he was doing to them, for failing so completely. "I wanted to protect you from this. I wanted to handle it myself. But you deserve to know." "How long have you known?" Lily asked. "The notice came 2 weeks ago, but it's been bad for a while, since—" He couldn't say since your mother died. "For a while. Why didn't you tell us?" Marcus was on his feet now, pacing. "We could have helped. We could have done something." "What?" "You work part-time at a hardware store. Your sister's in high school. What were you going to do, pay off $200,000? "I don't know. Something. Anything." Marcus slammed his fist against the wall. "That diner is our whole life. It's Mom's life. It's everything Grandpa and Great-Grandpa built. And you just let it go?" "I didn't let it go." Walter's voice cracked. "I fought for it every single day. I've been fighting for years, and I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so goddamn tired." The room was silent. Lily stood and walked to her father, wrapped her arms around him. "It's not your fault," she said. "Dad, it's not your fault. I should have done better. Your mother would have. Mom wouldn't have done anything different." Lily pulled back, looked him in the eye. "She loved you, and she loved that diner, and she wouldn't want you to blame yourself for trying to save her." Walter couldn't speak. He pulled both his children close and held on. The next 8 days passed in a blur of small humiliations. Walter applied for 2 more loans, was rejected for both. He tried to sell the jukebox, the vintage Wurlitzer that had been in the diner since 1962, and got offered $800. He considered it, then couldn't do it. Some things were worth more than money. On day 4, a man in a suit appeared at the diner. He introduced himself as someone from a commercial property company, expressed interest in the location, offered to take the problem off Walter's hands. The offer was $80,000 for everything, building, equipment, the Brennan name. Walter said no. "You're going to lose it anyway," the man said. "At least this way you get something. I get to sell my family's legacy for 1/3 of what it's worth to a company that'll turn it into a gas station or a parking lot." Walter walked to the door and held it open. "Get out of my diner." The man left. On day 6, strangers started showing up. a woman in business casual who walked around the property taking notes, a contractor who measured the windows without asking permission. Walter watched them from behind the counter, confused and increasingly afraid. The bank wasn't supposed to send people yet. He still had days. "Can I help you?" he asked the contractor. "Just doing an assessment. Won't be long." "Assessment for who?" The contractor looked at his clipboard. "Client wants to remain anonymous. I'm just here to measure." Walter let him measure. He didn't have the energy to fight anymore. 2 days before the deadline, Walter sat in the diner at dawn and looked at his grandfather's photograph on the wall. Young Charlie Brennan, Polish immigrant, American dreamer, standing in front of the lunch counter he'd built with his own hands. "I'm sorry," Walter said to the photograph. "I tried. I did everything I could." The photograph didn't answer. The diner was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the only cooler still, working, and the drip of the coffee maker finishing its cycle. Walter had written letters to his children, explaining everything, apologizing for everything. He'd contacted a bankruptcy lawyer, started the paperwork. He'd accepted that this was the end. The note from Jake was still in his pocket. He pulled it out, read it for the 100th time. Hold on. 23 days. No matter how dark it gets, hold on. 23 days had passed. 25 now, actually. Nobody had come. Nobody was going to come. The note was just words from a stranger who'd said what he needed to say to get out the door. Walter started to crumple the note, then stopped. He couldn't do it. Whatever Jake was or wasn't, he'd meant what he said that night. Walter believed that much. He smoothed out the napkin, folded it carefully, and put it back in his pocket. One more day. He'd hold on one more day. Then it would be over. The morning of the last day, Walter woke to the sound of engines. Not one engine, many. The rumble shook the windows of his house, rattled the glasses in the kitchen cabinets. He stumbled out of bed, pulled on clothes, and went to the window. Motorcycles, dozens of them, streaming down the road toward the diner. Big Harleys, chrome gleaming in the early sunlight, riders in leather cuts and denim. They passed his house and turned into the diner's parking lot, filling it, overflowing onto the shoulder of the road. Walter grabbed his keys and drove. When he pulled into the diner, his parking lot was a sea of motorcycles and riders, men and women in leather, patches on their backs. Not a single club, he realized, but many clubs mixed together like it was some kind of convention. They were setting up tables, unloading trucks, carrying equipment. In the center of all of it stood Jake, not the desperate, freezing man who'd collapsed in the snow. This Jake was clean-shaven, hair trimmed, wearing a leather jacket that probably cost more than Walter's car. He was directing the chaos like a general commanding troops, pointing and giving orders, and when he saw Walter get out of his truck, he smiled. "You held on," Jake said, walking toward him. "I wasn't sure you would." "I don't—" Walter looked around, overwhelmed. "What is this?" "This is me keeping my promise." Jake put a hand on Walter's shoulder and guided him through the crowd. "These are friends of mine. Some of them ride with me. Some of them just know me from the business. All of them wanted to be here when I explained." "Explained what?" They reached the diner's front door. Through the window, Walter could see more strangers inside. People in work clothes, carrying toolboxes and equipment. Someone was removing the broken freezer. Someone else was measuring the grill. "My name isn't Jake Mercer," Jake said. "Well, it was once. My legal name is Jacob Mercer Holloway. I own Holloway Hospitality Group." The name hit Walter like a physical force. Holloway Hospitality. He'd seen their name on hotels, resorts, restaurant chains. They were one of the biggest privately held hospitality companies in America. "You're—" "I'm the guy you fed soup and let sleep on your cot during the worst night of his life." Jake's smile softened. "I'm also the guy who's been buying up your debt from the bank for the past 2 weeks." Walter's legs went weak. He grabbed the door frame for support. "The bank sent me a payoff letter," Jake continued. $217,483.16. I paid it this morning. You don't owe them anything anymore." "I can't." "You can't." "I already did." Jake opened the door. "But that's not all. Come on, I want to show you something." Inside, the diner had been transformed into a construction site. Workers were installing a new freezer unit. Others were removing the ancient grill and replacing it with something that looked like it belonged in a professional kitchen. The old cash register was gone, replaced by a sleek point-of-sale system. Someone was rewiring the ceiling fixtures. "New equipment," Jake said, pointing. "Commercial grade, energy efficient. New electrical, new plumbing where it needed it. New roof, that's happening next week. And the sign. He walked Walter to the window and pointed outside, where a crew was working on the neon sign. Full restoration, same design, new components. It won't flicker anymore. Walter couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was seeing. There's more, Jake said. I've got a team, marketing people, social media experts, business consultants, ready to work with you. We'll build a website, set up online ordering, get you on the tourist maps. We'll help you hire staff, train them, create systems that let you step back a little, work less, earn more. I can't pay for any of this. You don't have to pay for anything. Jake turned to face him. This isn't a loan. It's not an investment. It's a gift. Why? Because you asked me that same question the night we met, and the answer hasn't changed. Jake's voice was thick. That night, I was in a bad place. Worse than I told you. I'd lost my partner. I'd lost my purpose. I'd lost the reason I started any of this. I got on my bike in a blizzard because part of me didn't care if I made it through or not. Walter remembered the gray face, the blue lips, the man who'd looked like death. You should have left me out there, Jake continued, or called 911 and let them handle it. The smart thing, the safe thing, but you carried me inside and wrapped me in blankets and cooked me the best meal I'd had in months. You told me about your grandfather and your wife and your kids in this place, and I remembered why Mike and I started buying diners in the first place. Not for the money, for the people, for places exactly like this one. Jake, I'm not finished. Jake's eyes were bright. You saved my life that night. Not just from the cold, from everything. You reminded me who I wanted to be, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you and your kids never have to worry about losing this place again. Walter felt tears on his cheeks. He hadn't cried since Carol's funeral, hadn't let himself, but now he couldn't stop. Jake pulled him into a hug, the kind of hug you give a brother, fierce and real. There's one more thing, Jake said when they separated. A condition. Anything. This stays your diner. The Brennan name, the Brennan family, the Brennan way of doing things. I'm not buying it from you. I'm not putting my name on it. This is your legacy, your grandfather's legacy. I'm just helping you keep it. Walter nodded. He couldn't have spoken if he tried. And, Jake continued, I want to talk to you about something bigger. Other diners, family places like this one, struggling the same way you were. I want to help them. I want to create a program, a foundation maybe, that does for them what we're doing here. And I want you to help me run it. Me? You know what it's like to be on the edge. You know what these places mean to their families and their communities. You know how to talk to owners who are too proud to ask for help. Jake smiled. I've got the money. You've got the heart. Together we might be able to save some diners. Walter looked around the room, at the workers installing equipment, at the bikers carrying furniture, at his grandfather's photograph still hanging on the wall. He thought about Carol, about what she would say if she could see this. She'd say, "Don't just stand there. Get to work." "Okay," Walter said. "I'm in." The neon sign blazed against the evening sky, bright and steady. Brennan's roadside diner, home of Mama's Pie. Walter stood at the window and watched the parking lot fill. Cars, mostly, families with kids, couples on date night, the regulars who'd been coming for decades, but motorcycles too. Jake's people, the ones who'd spent a week renovating the place, now made it a regular stop on their rides. They'd become customers, friends, part of the extended Brennan family. Dad. Lily appeared beside him, wearing a Brennan's apron, her hair pulled back. Table 6 wants to know if we have any coconut cream left. Tell them we're holding a slice for them. It's Mrs. Patterson. She's been ordering coconut cream since before you were born. Lily grinned and headed back to the floor. She'd started working here 3 times a week, not because she had to. Walter had tried to keep her out of it, let her focus on school, but because she wanted to. She said it felt like being close to Mom again. Marcus was in the kitchen, working the grill that actually heated in under 5 minutes now. He'd quit the hardware store after the renovation, taken over as assistant manager. He was good at it, better than Walter had been at his age. He had Carol's head for business and Charlie Brennan's stubbornness. The place was different now, but the same. The counter was original, the stools restored. The photographs were back on the walls, properly framed. The jukebox, the vintage Wurlitzer, had been fixed by one of Jake's people, a guy who collected them as a hobby. It played again, real vinyl, filling the room with the songs that had soundtracked Walter's entire life. The menu had expanded. New items alongside the classics, a few suggested by Jake's consultants, quinoa bowls, and gluten-free options that attracted younger customers. But Carol's pie was still the star. Apple, cherry, chocolate cream, lemon meringue, and the famous coconut cream that Mrs. Patterson had been ordering since 1987. They made fresh pies every morning now, and they sold out every night. The door opened and Jake walked in. He was wearing jeans and a work shirt, no leather today. He'd been at a meeting in the city, something about the foundation they were building. He spotted Walter and crossed the room. "How's it going?" "Busiest Thursday we've had in years." Walter shook his hand. "Maybe ever. We're going to run out of meatloaf." "Best problem to have." Jake slid into a booth. "I've got news." "Good news?" "Great news." Jake pulled out his phone, showed Walter a web page. "Highway Heritage Initiative. We just got our nonprofit status approved. Starting next month, we can officially begin helping other diners." Walter looked at the logo, a neon sign stylized with the tagline, "Saving America's Table, One Diner at a Time." His eyes burned. "We've already got 3 applications," Jake continued. "A place in Ohio, another in Tennessee, one in New Mexico. All family-owned, all struggling, all places that matter to their communities. And we can help them?" "We can help them." Jake leaned back. "I've got the funding in place. We've got consultants ready to go. All we need is someone to coordinate, visit the places, talk to the owners, figure out what they need." "I thought you wanted me for that." "I do, but I wanted to make sure you were ready." Jake met his eyes. "It's going to mean traveling, being away from here. Can you handle that?" Walter thought about it. A year ago, he couldn't have imagined leaving the diner for more than a day. It had been his anchor, his prison, his reason for existing. But things were different now. Marcus could run the place. Lily was learning. The new staff, hired and trained over the past 3 months, were solid, reliable. "I can handle it," Walter said. "Carol would have wanted me to." "That's what I thought." Jake smiled. "First trip is next week. Ohio. A couple named Rodriguez run a place called Mama Rita's. They're about where you were. 6 months from foreclosure, ready to give up. I want you to go talk to them." "Just talk?" "Just talk, for now. Listen to their story. Figure out what they need. Then we'll make a plan." Jake stood. "I'll send you the details tonight. And, Walter," he paused, "thank you for holding on. Thank you for coming back." Jake nodded and walked to the door. He paused there, looking around at the packed diner, the happy customers, the family working together behind the counter. "This is what it's supposed to look like," he said, half to himself. "This is what Mike and I imagined back when we started. You found your way back to it. You showed me the way." Jake opened the door. "See you next week, partner." He left. The bell over the door chimed, just like it had been chiming for 70 years. After closing that night, Walter sat alone at the counter. The place was quiet now, chairs stacked on tables, the kitchen cleaned, the last pie sliced and sold. Outside, the neon sign cast its glow across the parking lot. He pulled the napkin from his pocket, Jake's note, the one from that night in the storm. He'd had it laminated after the renovation, preserved behind plastic so the words wouldn't fade. "Hold on. 23 days, no matter how dark it gets, hold on. You said you wanted to pass this place to your grandchildren. You will. I promise you that." He'd framed it now. Tomorrow, he'd hang it behind the register where everyone could see. A reminder of what was possible when people helped each other. A promise that Brennan's would keep passing forward. But tonight, he just wanted to sit here and remember. Carol, teaching him her mother's pie recipe. His father, showing him how to balance the books. His grandfather, standing in front of the lunch counter he'd built with his own hands. They were here still. All of them. In every booth, every photograph, every song on the jukebox. And now, there was a new chapter. A foundation that would help other families keep their legacies alive. A partner who understood why these places mattered. A future that looked nothing like the one Walter had feared 3 months ago. The door opened. Marcus came in, Lily behind him. They'd been at a movie. Walter had insisted they take the night off, have some fun for once. "Dad?" Marcus looked concerned. "What are you still doing here?" "Just thinking." Lily slid into the booth across from him. "About what?" "About your mom, about Grandpa, about what happens next." He smiled. "I'm going to Ohio next week. There's a diner there that needs help." Marcus and Lily exchanged a look. They'd heard about the foundation, knew what Jake was building, but this was the first concrete step. "We've got this place," Marcus said. "Go." "You sure?" "Dad." Lily reached across the table and took his hand. "Mom would have wanted you to do this. You know that." Walter did know. Carol had always been the one pushing him to dream bigger, to think beyond the diner, to imagine what he could do with his life beyond these walls. He'd been too scared then, too attached to the certainty of routine. He wasn't scared anymore. "I love you both," he said. "And your mom. She'd be so proud of what we've built here." "She's proud," Lily said. "She's watching." They sat together in the quiet diner, the three of them, under the soft glow of the neon sign and the photographs of everyone who'd come before. Outside, the highway stretched away into the darkness, carrying travelers to wherever they were going. Some of them would stop here. They'd have a cup of coffee, a slice of pie, a meal that reminded them of home, and when they left, they'd take a little piece of Brennan's with them, the warmth, the welcome, the proof that places like this still existed. That was the legacy, not the building, not the debt paid off, not even the foundation that would help other families. The legacy was kindness, passed down through generations, given freely to strangers who needed it, returned 1,000-fold by people who remembered. Walter looked at his children, at the diner his grandfather had built, at the future spreading out before him. He was ready.